Military spouse transitional coach, and today it is Military Monday. Yay! I know people, oh, it's Monday, but I'm kind of liking my Military Mondays because I'm like, oh, I get to talk about things that are really important to military families, their spouses, the kids, all of it. So today, Cheyenne was available to hop on a call. I said, you've got to come give us some wisdom on the financial side because with my clients, finances is always one of the number one stressors. Anytime we go through our first, our first call, just getting to know each other, I'm like, where's the level of the financial situation on your plan? They all bring it up. It's an issue. People try to sweep it under the rug, hide the information, not talk about it, just pretend it's not there and go just max out those credit cards and we'll deal with it next year or, leave our kids in debt. So no, we don't want our lives to be that way. So today Cheyenne is joining me from the beautiful state of Wyoming, where we've actually done some camping too. Beautiful state there. So welcome, Cheyenne. Cheyenne is creating financial awareness, knowledge, and action for employers and divorcees by reducing health insurance premiums and increasing financial legacy. So she does this with specific solutions that she'll cater to you yourself. So today we're going to hear 5 money sense tips that military families can use in their lives just to set themselves up really for success for retirement. And I was just thinking earlier today, your retirement, this should be the title of my book, maybe. Your retirement starts like the day you join the military, or really when you wake up and you're born and you have a social security number. But once you get into the military, for sure, be planning your retirement, even from that level, like planning the big picture out. Don't be just running out and spending frivolously because you'll end up on the retirement side and wonder, what the heck? I just worked 20-something years and where'd the money go? So Cheyenne, welcome. And please kick it off. Tell us a little about how we can save and what kind of, walk us through some steps. I know it's only 20 minutes or so we'll just get some nuggets from you today.
Sounds great, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me on here today. These tips and tricks really are for everybody, but because everybody needs to remember that money is a long-term game, not a short-term sprint. Everybody's trying to get rich quick scheme because they haven't planned. So that scheme shouldn't be there for your lack of planning. And you don't really want to leave your family hanging. I always, talk about awareness. You need to start where you're going or start where you've been. Most people try to sit down and do a budget. It's really daunting. Like you said, they stuff their head in the sand. They don't want to deal with numbers, big, scary, audacious thing, right? What I actually start people with is looking backwards. Where did your money go last year? Because then you actually can budget for your future because now you know where it went. You can analyze what needs to go and what needs to stay. But otherwise, you're just kind of pulling numbers out of the sky when you're just trying to form a budget and have really no idea where to start. So I call it, building your budget backwards by first, we're going to lay out what you spent last year and move forward from there. So that's one of the tips that I have because I sat down many times to look at a budget and I'm like, well, how do you even get started? If I put down $500 a month for groceries and you spent actually $700, your budget's already toast right out the door, right? That $200 over, of lack of planning doesn't really help you, right?
Yeah. I would add also at church, several pastors have said this over the years at churches, and they're like, if you want to know where you're spending your money, look at your credit card statement, your bank statement, and your checkbook. Now people aren't really writing checks much anymore, but really that is a clear indication of where you're spending money. If you're not writing everything down, I grew up with my mom who had her little checkbook and she wrote every time the date. She had that little description line. I watched her, everything was accounted for. So she could tell where every penny went. She was a single mom. She was paying attention to those. I think you're a single mom, so you get that. But yeah, look at your checkbook, look at where you're spending the money. That's the reality, as much as you want to think like, I think I only get Starbucks once a month or something. No, maybe it's like 5 times a month.
Right. Well, and not only that, the part of putting it in a spreadsheet and seeing where it's at over the whole year is you actually get to see the impact all year. One of the things that I share with people is about I call them leaky windows, or the holes in your wallet where money just running out and you don't even know it. I actually did a compound calculator just to see the long-term effect. So if you say $15 a month, people go, it's not a big deal. It's only $180 a year. But if you actually invested that $15 and averaged an 8% return over 20 years, that's $8,000 just for one $15 transaction. And so knowing the effect of what it looks like all year, because I've had people, know where their money is going every month by keeping it up in their register, but they actually don't see the long-term effect. Like you said, oh, maybe they think they're only buying 1 cup of coffee, but when they actually look at their statement, they might be looking at it, 20 days out of 30. And that's a whole different picture then, especially when you start looking at that $15. Where can you start saving $15 and start multiplying that? And in short order, you can have your retirement and a backup plan for your retirement saved up. And you really should start when you start making wage. Even before you get into the military, it should be something to educate and start your kids off so that they start seeing the value of putting more away and saving. I always tell people, keep your goals in the forefront of your mind too, because then it helps remind you to save. Because otherwise we're inundated, we're swamped with ways to always spend our money. And oftentimes you're like, oh, I'm getting my tax return, I'm going to go get this and do this and spend that. No one's really looking at, say, hey, wait a minute, how can I save my tax return and help that prepare for my future? Or where can I use it to actually benefit my future instead of spend it all the time? Because we're inundated with impulsive buys. And that actually leads me to my next tip, is a do not buy list. After putting the multiple things on the shelf, because my brain was telling me, oh yeah, you got to remember to buy X, Y, or Z. And I'd buy it, and then I'd go put it on the shelf and went, oh, I bought it the last 10 times I went shopping or whatever. I realized I didn't need it all. And so I started a do not buy list, and I use it for multiple different ways. The things that I've already bought a spare of, or that I bought a case of, but I also use it for my grand ideas. I have lots of ideas that come up, and most of the time I don't even implement them. And so what I do is I use that do not buy list or an idea wait list, and I'll put everything on there that goes to support that idea, but with intent, I do not buy it unless I've went back to that idea multiple times and like, okay, I'm going to implement it now. So yes, it's worth purchasing the supportive items. But oftentimes part of the list actually gets absorbed by the stuff I already have around the house. And I don't even actually need to buy them, but it gives my mind a way to think about it and brain dump it out so that I'm not running around in a hamster wheel, reminding myself over and over about these things. It helps my mind just let them go. So I call them like mind hacks of savings, because you really have to figure out ways to alter, because your mind is set up to remember the things you tell it, especially if you tell it over and over. And so I've learned that having those triggers to say, hey, I don't need to spend that because I already have it, or I can use something else, really helps your mind let that go so you're not overbuying things that you don't need.
And don't we buy on emotion? Like, I mean, it's just like, buying 101. Everything is connected to an emotion and a feeling. Look at everything in your house that you have. Look at the car you're driving, the bike you bought, whatever it is. Like, we go in with, we're buying and we're leading with emotion. And then I think it was a financial planner who told me once, and then we justify, or my husband too, who took some accounting after he got out of the military. Then we justify after we bought it, like, why we really need it, why this was so important to pay a little extra for this purse or those shoes or whatever. It's like, well, I really needed it, but you're leading with the emotion. It's completely emotional buying. So what you're saying is you're actually changing that mindset shift, and you're writing it down first. You're putting it aside and going back to it. I think at Dave Ramsey too, they talk about like putting the credit card in the freezer or something for part of the thing. So that you're literally like, you can't just grab it and go and swipe. You have to have this process to sit with it first. So that whole process is huge in the mindset shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually why I tell people to set up 2 accounts also, because I have them set up a bill account where all their deposits go. And then I have them set up a separate spending account. So when they actually budget that $500 a month for groceries and fuel and their incidentals, they put that one into their spending account, because then when you log in and you look at in your default account is the one that you're spending, you know what you actually have left to spend, versus having all your money in one spot. And then you go and look at your account and go, oh yeah, we can go out to dinner, and then forget your power bill's still due. And now you don't have the money to cover it because you went out to dinner instead. But when you look at your spending account, then you know for sure that I truly have that money to invest if you want to, celebrate something. But you're correct. So many people can judge, you can create reasons, justify those reasons to spend. And that's why I think we need to, start retraining our brain and going, how can I justify putting that money in an investment or savings or protection plan? So you don't leave your family hanging, because, as we were discussing before the show, you said that you lose the disability income, and that's half of your income. Well, what does that do if the
My
veteran
spouse
dies
passes
and now their whole family, their kids and everybody are left with half of the income? They still have the same mortgages. They still have a majority of the money to still spend. So it's definitely wise to make sure that they're planning for their future with protection products that also can build cash value. I mean, there's a lot of great products out there and solutions that can help protect that, and also get your kids started. Start educating them. So when you start setting them up where they save 10% or more, especially because they don't have the expenses as much, and and also giving to charities as well, because what that does is, that's another mind hack, is when you see that you're going to donate X amount consistently, it helps train your brain to think in the state of abundance versus scarcity. And so it retrains your brain when you're automatically setting up those, whether it's to your church, whether it's to other charities. When you set that up, it retrains your brain saying, hey, I'm living in abundance, and it actually attracts more opportunities to you as well.
It's so true. I have to go back to setting up for the kids. I learned younger on because I had a parent who passed away when I was in college. So I had to get a little more savvy with my finances. And so by the time I got married, I realized that my kids, they left the hospital with a birth certificate, I say, and a social security number. And that was kind of new. I was kind of training my husband on them. I'm like, oh no, I lost a parent. I know how this planning thing works, and we got to save money and invest and all this. And so I got him up to speed on that. And he was like, all about saving. Like, that's great. So I've already grown up. My whole mindset was, where can I save? Where can I hold on to my money longer? When we do our taxes, like, we're not giving anything away that we don't have to. Like, we're going to hold on to whatever we can as long as possible. So it's a joint effort. If you're single, you're making all those decisions alone. If you've got a spouse, get involved in the finances with them. I have so many clients that are like, oh my gosh, my husband does all the finances. I'm so embarrassed. I don't know what I'm doing. And I've been like that too. And I still am with parts. So even in my, I think, group mentoring and workshop programs, I'm going to start having more financial education in there, because us spouses are not always at the forefront. Some, it's the opposite. The spouses are like, the husband will say, oh, my wife handles all that, like he's just gets his allowance and she's in charge. So it could go both ways. But just if you're working as a joint team, do it together, get that birth certificate and the social security number when you leave the hospital, because what you do with that social security number, you're opening an aggressive growth bank account for your infants, as they're, barely changing their first diaper, they're getting their aggressive growth. They can take those risks in the financial market more, they're like 1 or 2 days old. So yeah, that was a huge shift to do that way. And then when they got older, for the children, I remember at about age between 10 and 12, we decided, okay, let them play with a little debit card. They had their babysitting money or their lawn mowing money, whatever they put in there for, the chores they did. And I just remember my daughter we were living in Hawaii, stationed at the base there. And our daughter goes downtown with her friends, and they're going into some little ABC store to get some snacks or something before going to the beach. And she calls me on the phone and she's like, Mom, the debit card doesn't work anymore. And she tried to buy herself like another beach towel or something. And she's like, I swiped them at the checkout. It doesn't work. And so that was like a huge lesson for like, well, that's because you spent all the money in there. So there's no more money in there now. Well, how am I supposed to buy, my candy bar or whatever? I'm like, well, yeah, you got to make more money to put it in there to spend it. So yeah, playing those little games with the kids, it's a great awareness for them. And I think we overdid it with our daughter. She's so frugal now. Oh my gosh, we go to her place when we visit her in Maryland, and she's caught like, I saved money on this and I'm not going to spend on that. I'm like, oh wow, we have created a 10x what we were doing. So yeah,
but
it does.
That's not a bad place to be, really, because so much you're inundated, like I say, to pay for this tank of fuel in the truck starting out. And it really opened up their eyes and go, oh wow, like that doesn't go very far. No, it doesn't. And that's where it's important to start that savings and investment. And the other thing, when you're talking about the babies, is I always encourage people to do, there's a variety of different solutions to help them build for that wealth. But I also do gift share with your family. Most of the time people inundate them with new clothes and totes of toys. And those kids aren't going to remember all those things. And if they didn't have it, they're not going to remember it. So why not save the money and go share one gift with your family, so it can be a quality thing that doesn't break within moments. And then put the rest of the money that you had budgeted for that gifting season in their financial budget, into their plan so that they can save. So you're saving them for the future because they'll thank you later. They may not understand for years until they get into their 20s and go, oh, wow, that was so helpful. But without it, they have all these totes of toys that they don't even remember, that you've thrown in the trash, that you've given away because you just don't want to trip on them anymore. And so why do that? Buy them a few key things that you share together with family, and then put the rest of that budgeted money for their financial future, because life happens. There's no getting away from that, right?
Yeah, there's always a disaster. You're either going into a crisis, you're in a crisis, or a crisis is coming. That's what the pastor always tells me.
Yeah, and that's about right. It's like, even for myself, I've been so close to having so many times where things are going right with money, and then a major life event happens and it's backwards again. You're like, okay, well, we'll start again.
Step back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That just reminds me too, with the kids, by the time they got to high school and driving age, all their friends, I mean, we're like in affluent Orange County. So kids are getting like BMWs delivered at the school with the balloons on them. And, the late, like, my son was in a Tesla before us. He got a ride home. And he's like, Mom, I was in a Tesla today. I'm like, you went in one of those cars? What's it like? He's like, oh, it's so cool. You need it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So what they saw around them. And then we had our little island beater Geo Metro that we had gotten in Hawaii. And we figured, it was cheaper to ship it with a Navy carrier to the U.S., let it sit for a few years. We can drive it around as the parents. And then when the kids got older, pass it to them. So it was a stick shift, which actually is a really good tip too, because your friends aren't going to want to borrow your car to run around, or can I borrow your keys? Because it's stick shift and nobody's driving stick shift. So our kids had to learn stick shift going uphill to our house, which was, a challenge, but hey, they got over it after a few slides backwards. And they realized at first they were like, oh my gosh, I have this Geo Metro, like it's just sitting in the driveway. Our daughter was like, give me the keys, I'm going. Our son was a little more, football star, he's all like, I don't know about that car, and we're like, that's the car that's in there for you. Your daughter's on, or sister's on to college now. This is the car. And he's kind of thinking like some other BMW is going to appear out of the sky or something like his buddy's got. I'm like, this is the car. But once they started talking it, they realized their friends were just dumping that cash into the gas tank. Like, Mom, my friend, every like 3-4 days they have to fill up the car. Guess what, Mom? I haven't had to fill up this tank for 2 months. The Geo Metro, the 3-cylinder Geo Metro. So those are all life lessons. Like when we grew up too, like, you don't have to buy everything new. Those those Marines that get out, they get into the military or any military branch. And the first thing they do with their paycheck, they have these like expo booths, I think, to set them up, give them, life insurance and whatever's going on, and plan for their future. But there's always the car dealerships there. And most of them are going to get that emotional buy again and buy that brand new truck and end up with a payment for years. And when we were first married, my husband, we go to the lemon lot. Actually, I'm still home with the kids. And he rolls up the road with some little burgundy Volkswagen Golf stick shift again. And I come out and I go, what's that? And he's like, that's our new car. Because all we had was like a motorcycle and another car at the time for him to drive around. So he's like, this is your car. And I was kind of like, a little Volkswagen. And I looked inside and I panicked. I said, it's a stick shift. I don't drive stick shift. And he's like, well, you're going to learn, and that was it. He took me all around Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base, up and down those hills. And I realized those decisions we're making back then helped us save so that we could buy our used Sprinter van now to travel all through the U.S., Mexico. This summer, we're doing Canada and Alaska. Like, these things don't just happen. It was planning back when we were newly married in our 20s, not buying the new car, thinking about those expenses. So yeah, you just got me on a whole roller coaster now of my past.
But it's important that, like I said, money is a long game, and the quicker you can remove the emotion from it and see it as the tool, like you said. And, I found that with so many people that plan their goals, is they're looking for the dream vacation, the brand new fancy sport car. And there's nothing wrong with having the big house and the fancy cars and stuff. But are you really looking to have the higher insurance, the maintenance costs, something else to put in the garage? Or are you looking for the experience, is what I like to ask. If it's the experience, then plan a vacation and go rent one. Go experience an Airbnb that's in a mansion if you want. Doesn't necessarily mean you need all this space. I've told that to my boys. It's like, when we're wealthy, I don't want people to know. Like, we're going to be humble about it, because there are so many people that you pass those kind of people every day, and you don't know that the money and the assets that they have to their benefit is huge. And you couldn't tell out here. We have a lot of ranchers that literally like could walk out of their shoes and their hat looks like they're going to fall off and their truck's all beat up, but they have a lot, but they also spend it wisely. They're spending it on assets that produce income. And so, that leads me to the other way of, a lot of people are like, oh, well, some people say no debt. Yeah, you don't want consumerism debt. You don't want the debt because you go and buy $1,000 phone every time they upgrade, and you don't, the fancy shoes and the closet full of purses and shoes and or the shop full of tools that you never lay your hands on. I mean, you don't want the debt for the consumerism. There's ways to leverage it for income producing activities, but you don't want to leverage it for stuff that just sits around and depreciates. Because that's the lesson I've been trying to show my kids. They wanted, this thing and that thing. And then they're like, oh, we'll just sell this and go buy that. And I was like, yeah, and you're only going to get like half or less. And they're like, but why? It's like, because you already bought it. You've used it. It's not worth as much now. So don't go, trying to get them to understand that it's better to sit on your decision instead of hurrying up and buying that thing that sounds so great right now, because then when you do decide you want something else, now you got to sell it or basically give away what you have. You're not getting hardly anything out of it. And that's that consumerism mindset. It's like, no, you need to do it, buy the things that are going to support you, or, make other money or something else, or buy quality. So you're only buying it once.
Right. Yeah. And that leads me to doing the van life. Like you had me triggered at shoes, because every time we pack that van, we go through our shoe episode of me putting all these extra shoes in there. My husband has his sneakers and his flip flops. And he's like, what else do you need? And I'm like, well, when we drive through Texas or Tennessee, I need my cowboy boots. And then if we end up in some mountainous spot with snow, I need my snow boots. I mean, so here I am trying to overpack the car, and we're getting ready to do the process. In fact, I should probably just have someone with a camera and YouTube us, because that's the catcher when you watch us pack in that van of what's coming in and out. And like, oh my gosh, my mom got to be a process of it once, and then she was enabling me too. That was bad. I'm like, Mom, okay, my husband's in the backyard, take my clothes, go hang them in the closet back there. And my husband will walk in the van again, like, didn't I tell you like only 3 dresses? Why are there 8 dresses in here? And everything's in and out. But yeah, when we travel on the road too, and if I like a pair of something, I do window shopping more now. I think we've talked about that too. It's like, oh, that looks so pretty. And I'm like, I'm in a van, I'm moving around in a van half my year. Like, this can't fit in the van. It doesn't fit in the van. So it really helps you with your, minimalist mindset and just window shopping, taking a picture of something pretty and moving on with that emotion, because it's not physically going to fit in the van. And if there's some pair of shoes, something I'm begging like a little kid, like, come on, honey, I think I really want these shoes. He's like, get rid of something in the van then. And we're constantly driving through thrift store areas, like, okay, Google thrift store. And we go there and we, things that haven't been worn for a while. And they say, like, if you haven't touched or worn it in like 6 months, you're probably not going to wear it. That's something you maybe can let go of. And that creates room for something else. But yeah, it's a constant like Jenga in the van of what's going in, what's coming out, because you can't keep stuff in it. Stuff has to come out when it comes in, and makes you really do a lot of conscious shopping. I had someone else on here talking about that. So like really being conscious about your shopping. And most of what we do everywhere, it's about what we can save. Like we go to the farmers markets, we might spend a little more there than going to a traditional grocery store, but we like to give back to the community. So that's the conscious shopping part. But at the same time too, we're constantly looking for ways to save. Like, oh, do we want to go pay? I mean, we're so bad now. We're like, do we want to go pay $15 for the campsite? We already get 50% off in Florida because we're military veteran with disability ratings. So for everybody that pays $30 a night at a campsite, we get $15 a night. And then we rent out our house as an Airbnb because supplemental income. I mean, my mind is wired to save. Where can I save? So then we're like, we literally have these conversations. Do we want to go spend $15? Beautiful campground with alligators around and beautiful nature scenery. And we're like, yeah, no, let's drive off into the woods somewhere. Let's go find our own little place and save $15. I mean, but you add that up, that like you're talking about this at $15 a day added over a span of camping over time. It's like, oh, wow, we got all this extra money from our Airbnb and we only went to a few campsites. So it really is. It's almost like a game. You have to make your mindset shift. Like it's a game. Like, how can I save? This is like a fun game. And it's like a challenge now. Like if we spend an extra $15, like, oh, we got taken this time. How we spend that? We didn't need to do that. It's like a challenge, a daily challenge when you're living on the road.
Well, yeah, and that can really be put in place anywhere, really, because that mindset, because how much of the stuff do you have in your home that you don't even use just get rid of a whole bunch of things, because I just want to simplify life. When you do that, it makes your life so much easier,
Right.
by when you simplify it, and it frees up your mind as well when you start to do some of that cleansing of some of that. And it also reframes the reasons why you want to save too. When you start getting rid of stuff, you're like, oh, wow, I haven't used that in this many years and I don't need it around anymore.
Yeah.
And you start to realize that had that little birdie in your brain saying, yeah, we don't need to buy that today because it'll probably be something else that just sits in your closet.
Yeah. I mean, I've done declutter the mind coaching, declutter your space. I had somebody call me up that a borderline hoarder, and also I get it, like a parent dies and you inherit all this china and like beautiful things from them, and it's like it was sitting up in her apartment consuming everything, and she just needed help to downsize. So we literally started with her kitchen. There's a plan of what rooms to start first, and she had 3 spatulas, 4 big spoon ladles. Like we went through it all one by one and just broke it down. You break it down in bite-sized pieces. So when you're doing physical space clearing, that's a whole other topic.
Right.
But yeah, look around if you have duplicates and triplicates. And I know you and I have talked about like hair product, if we're buying stuff, like when we started to military, at least when you move every 2 to 4 years, it forces you to declutter, because it's like, okay, we got to get everything out of this house. We're leaving the base house unit now and we're going somewhere else. It forces you to kind of have a fresh cleaning every time. And then you start that new space for 2-3 years, like, okay. And then somehow you fill it up like crazy again. And then you go through that whole process again. So when you're sitting in one place for like years on end, oh my gosh, it's a lot harder to just, get rid of it.
But, it's also good to keep in mind, give yourself grace, because oftentimes people don't realize part of why they stuff their head in the sand and not want to deal with their money is because they're scared of the numbers or the decisions that they've made. And I tell people, it's like when I work with them, it's a criticism-free, judgment-free zone, because we're already our worst critic. And oftentimes a lot of our spending habits and things that we've done was something you learned before the age of 7. So I don't know about you, but I don't think I was very bright at the age of 7. So you're thinking you're evaluating a lot of things, and a lot of those things that are trained into your unconscious mind are long before you even knew what an unconscious mind was. You're just a kid, you're just doing things. And so that's where I have had to learn that I needed my own little mind hacks and tricks, and I call them tricks and triggers, to help me save, because I was doing repetitive purchasing habits because of how I was brought up. Because you look through the generations from people that were in the Depression and they used everything, they stockpiled and kept everything, but it was because of the society they were living in at the time. They had to conserve everything. And so you're learning from those stages. And if no one's broken that to say, hey, wait a minute, we're not living in that scarcity as much. We have a different generation that we're living in. It's okay. But instead of throwing a whole bunch of stuff away, just don't buy it, really. And that's where it's learning how to stop that habit, that impulse buy. Because just leave it on the shelf rather than taking it home and then throwing it away later, because then you're wasteful, So it's better just all around just to work on ways to save. But give yourself grace, because we all have those habits that have not helped us financially on our financial journey. And just be curious and go, that's interesting. Why did I do that again? Or how can, ask better questions instead of criticizing where you've been. You've already done it. You've made the mistakes. Oh, well, now you're going to learn from them, and we're going to move on. And that's where, it starts with that awareness and building that better outlook for the future.
I love that. Well, we only have a few minutes left, so I will just summarize again, like the main 5 points that Cheyenne was talking about today was basically in the realm of 1, creating a budget, 2, planning for your future, 3, taking advantage of your benefits. And 4, we have avoiding consumerism debt. There's other debt you can leverage, but that's if you're making an income. So that would be a whole other conversation just in that. And then 5, seeking professional advice. So that's where people like Cheyenne come in from the financial side. I come in from the coaching side, just to get you on track. We want our military families to be saving and making great choices while they're active duty military. And all this will be with the big picture mindset of retiring with a plan and an outcome, so that you can go travel and do turn your dream into a reality. So from battlefield to blissful retirement is what I'm looking for, helping people. So Cheyenne, how can people link up with you for maybe get a complimentary session with you and dive deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a lot on LinkedIn, so I'm usually there. They're welcome to book a meeting with me on Calendly for their complimentary meeting to really review those leaky windows or the holes in their wallet and see where we can save you some money that can help you in the future and start to reframe how your mind thinks about money.
Thank you. And I'll end with myself. I'm also doing VA disability rating audits. There's a lot of claims out there. I'll be doing another LinkedIn Live just later today on breaking that down. So if you're in the process of retiring and you're working on your VA disability claim and you're kind of stuck, there are ways to help. There's third-party advocates that can help you. There's a lot of statistics out there about what's going on with the pipeline and how long the backlog is with the VA. So you might want to reach out. I've got my link in the chat here as well that says resetwithvanessa.com/disability-rating-audit. And you can go there for a rating. We'll have a conversation and see if we can get the compensation you deserve for your service-connected injuries. So that is definitely part of a financial conversation as well, because that is money that goes separately than your retirement paycheck for you to your bank account for life. So you can take that too and reinvest it into, your future, your legacy, like Cheyenne was just talking about. So,
and I'd like to do a shout out for Philip that's joining us on this call. And I hope he's gotten a lot out of it today. And thank you for your participation.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, guys. Well, we will see you another time for Military Monday. Go out there and change that mindset where you can save today, not spend today. It'll come back on the other end in retirement. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Bye.